And what, may I ask, is your name?
When you think of me, you should think of fire.
Isn't it true that we are living in a franchise mining era? Nearly every major film that comes out in 2025 is a live-action remake, spin-off, sequel, or prequel, not to mention the inadvertent satire thrown in for good measure. One of this year's biggest surprises is undoubtedly Ballerina. Nobody anticipated the Wickerverse's growth, and Ballerina does a good job of pirouetting into the stage without losing a beat for the most part. The movie does not pretend to be a John Wick clone, nor does it pretend that a 100-pound lady can throw guys twice her size with ease. Instead, Ballerina draws inspiration from movies like Atomic Blonde and Kill Bill, bringing sleek action to a head with a raw intensity that definitely bleeds the traditional John Wick tone that we've all grown accustomed to by now. Eve is the protagonist of the tale. She is anxious for revenge against a man known as the Chancellor for killing her father, and she is plagued by the ghosts of her past. The tale is simple and effective, with a few cliches thrown in for good measure. This non-stop thrill coaster revolves around a woman named Eve. She's haunted by spirits from her past, seeking vengeance on a man known as the Chancellor for killing her father. Grief-stricken, a young Eve is recruited into the Ruska Roma organization and attempts to establish herself as a force of nature. Guided by the director, of course, her position and training lead her to seek revenge on the Chancellor and his cult. Eve is forced to fight through swarms of individuals working for the same clan in the mountains, tucked in the European village of Hallstatt. Full protocols are initiated, accompanied by the ringing of church bells for every single townperson after Eve. Eve is swiftly encircled and held at gunpoint, which does not bode well. The director is upset that Eve defied her, and Ella has also been apprehended. We now find that she is the Chancellor's granddaughter. He put a hit out on his own son for attempting to escape the cult. The Chancellor is responsible for Eve's father's death, but Eve also has a sister, Lena. When she finds out, she chooses to help her and works with Eve to keep her safe. Their father betrayed the cult, but Lena witnesses Karen and the director doing the same thing with the girls in their midst. Lena believes they are at least honest about their aims and will continue to support the Chancellor. However, the Chancellor gives the order to kill both females, ignorant that Lena is on his side. Lena was only 9 when she learned Eve had died, and she has carried this with her ever since. Unfortunately, a stray grenade through the glass kills Lena, severing any ties Eve may have had with her family and any hope of mending. The Chancellor is outraged, and once the director dismisses Eve, declaring war on the Ruska Roma organization as a result. The director wants to try to settle this, so he decides to send someone who can help Eve turn around. What about that person, John Wick? Wick and Eve end up fighting, but he understands her pain. He knows she's looking for the Chancellor to exact revenge on her father, and the look in her eyes as he holds her at gunpoint says it all. Wick chooses to give her a chance. Specifically, you have till midnight to accomplish the work. Otherwise, there will be consequences. The Chancellor hunts Eve with his lethal weapon, Dex, as she works her way through the armory toward her goal. Dex and Eve fight with flamethrowers, resulting in a massive street battle. The Chancellor learns that John Wick has gone AWOL, and he is compelled to relocate with Ella. Eve expertly utilizes a power hose to extinguish Dex's fires while this is going on, while Wick, equipped with a sniper, assists Eve and destroys Dex. He lets Eve escape when time runs out, and she approaches the Chancellor shortly after killing his driver on the way out. The Chancellor reiterates in the street that, despite his death, the hamlet and, by extension, the cult will survive. He feels that fate cannot be changed, and that Eve is simply fighting herself here. Eve has had enough and shoots the guy dead. Pine's daughter is saved, and Wick retreats, leaving Eve very much alive. Wick rings, the director confirms that the Chancellor has died. Much to her annoyance, while Eve takes Ella to see her father, who is healing in the hospital. Eve may not have been able to save her own family, but she can at least reconnect them and heal someone else's. At the end of the film, Eve decides to check in at the Continental. Despite the fact that she has cut off the snake's head, the body remains, and she is now a wanted woman. Eve is prepared for this, and places her symbolic ballerina under the bell jar. It's a way for her to convey that she knows she's wanted, but she's ready for the Ruska Romans nonetheless. Eve leaves the neighboring theater, after realizing that she now has a $5 million contract on her head, implying that things are only getting started. A young Eve who is grieving gets enlisted in the Ruska Roma organization and, with the director's help, strives to become a force of nature. Naturally, she soon sets her eyes on the Chancellor and his cult as a result of her training and employment, determined to exact that incredibly sweet retribution. Much of the tale and motivations are driven by the standard revenge storyline, with a few common clichés added for good measure. Anticipate Easter eggs from John Wick, the typical themes of long-lost family, and the damsel in distress, cliché in the shape of little Ella. And there's a lot of fighting along the way, including the requisite fight scene at the nightclub. The majority of Eve's biography is acceptable, but her revenge plot seems quite shallow. However, we suppose we can't expect too many complexities in a series where the entire series' rising events have been about getting revenge for a murdered dog. However, the manner Ballerina handles these battles is what makes it unique. Eve is instructed early on to fight like a girl and not follow the same rules as her male peers. She can't dominate her rivals and is tossed around like a rag doll. Alternatively, she may play dirty. Eve fights in an unusual way, but it's still elegant enough to resemble a dance. In keeping with its ballerina moniker, the movie incorporates several dance-like maneuvers into its choreography and creative battles. With brief moments of humor, the visceral action also subverts expectations in that way. These are a great way to brighten the mood at pivotal plot sections. For instance, Eve repeatedly switches the TV channel while using a remote control to beat an adversary. Another time, Eve fights a cook in a kitchen, and when she loses her gun, there is a frantic rush for it, and both women bash plates over each other's heads to get it. Eve differs from John Wick in part because of these little moments, which use the action to convey a tale. The most recent John Wick sequels have a lot in common with the later Fast and Furious films, and the same approach must be used here, judging Ballerina based only on the quantity of punches, kicks, and wayward plates to her face would be unfair because that is pretty much the opposite of this series. And to be fair, it's still pretty enjoyable. Aside from the nightclub sequence, the other battles are extremely inventive. A duel with flamethrowers adds an added level of strategy and intensity to the fold, while an unexpected skirmish inside a gun store employing grenades makes for a gloriously explosive and very stylish sequence. The styling and overall cinematography of the John Wick films are unquestionably impressive. Ballerinas are no exception. A lot of the fights are entertaining to watch, and you'll be hooked from beginning to end to see where the filmmakers take this one next. The soundtrack completes the film, with throbbing, bass-thumping hits interspersed with classical music and mournful piano string pieces. The most serious complaint against Ballerina comes from John Wick himself, given that the film is attempting to let Ana de Armas fill Keanu Reeves' enormous boots. Showing the man himself throughout the film suggests a lack of faith in Eve's ability to do the job on her own. We realize that this is a manner of passing the torch, but fans are more likely to be excited about Wick's role in the storyline than Eve's revenge plot, and these sequences utterly overshadow Eve, depriving her of agency. We honestly believe the film would have worked much better without him, perhaps with a separate agent or even a call back to an earlier character in the film. It's not perfect, but Ballerina is satisfying enough to be a major blockbuster action film. It's the type of action film meant to be seen on the large screen, with high explosive drama and well-choreographed combat scenes. This franchise hasn't run out of steam yet, and thankfully, the creators don't just throw in the towel and repeat what's already been done. Like Eve's fighting technique, this is a gritty, visceral, and occasionally messy picture that gets the job done in the end.